Chapter 27, Part 2 of J.S. Bach, Volume 2. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. J.S. Bach, Volume 2 by Albert Schweitzer. Translated by Ernest Newman. The cantatas of the years 1725 to 1727. The music of the aria, quote, Bleibt, ihr Engel, bleibt bei mir, stay ye angels, stay with me, end of quote, is of course derived from the graceful angel theme. The trumpet adds the chorale, Ach Gott, lass dein lieb Engelein. This causes the movement to be unusually long, even for Bach. The marking of adagio, therefore, ought not to be taken too literally. The final chorale, Lass dein Engel mit mir fahren, with its free orchestral accompaniment, is extraordinarily solemn in its effect. Among the other dramatic cantatas of this period, there are none that outwardly form so complete a whole as Herr, gehe nicht ins Gericht, No. 105, and Schauet doch und sehet, No. 46. They are composed of separate numbers, but these are often so powerful in effect that we are not conscious of the lack of an inner cohesion. The first chorus of the two-part chorale cantata for the first Sunday after Trinity, O Ewigkeit, du Donnerwort, No. 20, first composition, is laid out in the French overture form. The vivace commences with O Ewigkeit, Zeit ohne Zeit. It is rather short relatively to the grave. Footnote. The final words of the verse do not suit the return to the grave. In any case, the employment of the overture form to the chorale chorus here is not very happy. End of footnote. The effect of the chorus comes from the animation of the orchestral accompaniment and the extreme simplicity of the chorale figuration. The aria, quote, O Ewigkeit, du machst mir bange, O eternity, thou fillest me with fear, end quote, is dominated by the sigh motif. In the aria, quote, wacht auf, die Posaune schallt, awake, awake, ere the trumpet sounds, end quote. Bach, of course, employs that instrument. The fine trumpet part that he gives to it will exculpate him even in the eyes of the strictest musical aesthetician. In the alto aria, quote, O Mensch, errette deine Seele, entfliehe Satan's Sklaverei. O man, save thy soul, fly from Satan's bonds, end quote. The musical illustration of the text is quite excessive. Nowhere else in music has the painful writhing of a body been so realistically depicted. Footnote. The texts of the arias are partly taken from the remaining strophes of Rist's chorale. End of footnote. The opening aria of the cantata for the 9th Sunday after Trinity, Tue Rechnung, Donnerwort, das die Felsen selbst zerspaltet, No. 168, text by Frank, is rather enigmatic. It is not clear what is signified by the agitated figure in the strings. It suggests most strongly the aria of the scourging in the St. Matthew Passion, Erbarmes Gott. As a matter of fact, the figure here also symbolizes a succession of blows. Bach remembers the text that has been in the mind of his librettist, quote, Ist mein Wort nicht ein Hammer, der Felsen zerschmeißt? Is not my word like a hammer that breaketh the rock in pieces? Jeremiah 23:29, end quote. And accordingly depicts the hammer blows in his music. When played with sufficient animation, the movement is very impressive. If the music to the aria, quote, Kapital und Interessen meiner Schulden groß und klein, müssen einst verrechnet sein. Capital and interest of my sins, great and small, must some day be reckoned up. Does not affect us very deeply, that is not to be wondered at. On the other hand, a fascinating effect is made by the titanic efforts expressed in the bass accompaniment to the aria, Herr, zerreiß des Mammons Ketten, Lord, break the chains of Mammon. In the opening duet of the cantata for the 6th Sunday after Easter, Sie werden euch in den Bann tun, number 44, they will put you under the ban, The word ban is expressed with dreadful force. The impression of horror is intensified by progressions of fifths in the instrumental basses. Which are made still more prominent by the figures in the second oboe. The choir enters with the words, Es kommt aber die Zeit, dass wer euch töten wird, The theme of the aria, Es ist und bleibt der Christentrost, is a little confusing at first. The jubilant triplets are explained, however, by the sequel, where mention is made of the, Lachen der Freudensonne, laughter of the sun of joy, Bach fastens upon these words because he sees the opportunity they give him for characteristic music. In the opening chorus of the cantata for the 3rd Sunday after Epiphany, Alles nur nach Gottes Willen, number 72, text by Frank, the main musical theme is prompted by a word of quite subordinate importance. It is the word Zeit, time. Alles nur nach Gottes Willen, so bei gut als böser Zeit. God's will be done, both in good and evil time. Bach expresses it by the stroke of the pendulum, as in the cantata, Wer weiß, wie nahe mir mein Ende, hingeht die Zeit, herkommt der Tod. Who knows how near my ending is? Time flies, death is coming. The monotonous rhythm in the bass, in which the rest of the orchestra also joins. Is accordingly maintained from beginning to end of the chorus. It is to this impressive tick-tack that the choir sings the moving text. In the almost dance-like prelude to the aria, Mein Jesus will es tun, this will my Jesus do, the upper voices several times pause suddenly on a chord, while the bass of the theme continues. The only other aria in which this occurs is, Wirf mein Herze, wirf dich noch in des höchsten Liebesarme, cast thyself, O my heart, into the loving arms of God, in the cantata, Mein Gott, wie lang, ach lange, number 155, in which passionate movement it depicts the heart at rest in God's arms. Bearing this musical identity in mind, let us look again at the text of the aria, Mein Jesus will es tun. The passage is at once seen to mean, Although thy heart is overwhelmed with heaviness, it shall rest gently in his arms. This is one of the cases where the meaning of Bach's music becomes clear by the comparison of two quite unconnected passages. The theme of the opening aria of the cantata for Sexagesima, Leicht gesinnte Flattergeister, number 181, runs thus. It is never developed, but simply repeated, One is tempted to believe that Bach is painting the Flattergeister, light-minded people, the fowls of the air that pick up the seeds, who are referred to in the Gospel for the day, Luke 8:4-15. We instinctively see a swarm of crows descending upon a field with beating wings and wide-stretched feet. In the following aria, the schädlichen Dornen, injurious thorns, are symbolized by the staccati in the bass, a final chorus of much beauty, Lass höchster uns zu allen Zeiten, compensates the hearer for the almost too drastic character of the other music. The opening chorus of the cantata for the 13th Sunday after Trinity, Du sollst Gott deinen Herrn lieben, number 77, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God, is treated symbolically. Bach's knowledge of the Bible reminds him that Christ's answer to the question as to the greatest commandment in the law was that the whole of the law and the prophets was summed up in the commandment to love. Footnote: Matthew 22:34-40. In the version in Luke 10:23-37, which is the Gospel for the day and on which the text of the cantata is founded, this concluding passage is lacking. Here we clearly see how far afield Bach sometimes goes in order to find characteristic ideas for his music, and how he does not hesitate to go past his real text if he sees what he wants outside it. End of footnote. He expresses this in his music by surrounding the chorus that announces the new commandment with the cantus firmus of the chorale, quote, Dies sind die heiligen 10 Gebot. These are the sacred 10 commandments. End quote. In the orchestra, the lesser commandments are represented by the theme in crotchets in the trumpet. The bass trombone of the organ gives it out in minims, signifying the greater commandments. The rest of the orchestra, with the opening motif of the melody, symbolizes the least of the commandments, the jots and tittles of the law. Just as Jesus derived his new commandment of love from the old law, so Bach forms the theme of his chorus out of the first intervals of the old chorale. Unfortunately, the further course of the text gave him no opportunity to write particularly striking music. The poems of the two cantatas, Erforsche mich Gott, number 136 for the 8th Sunday after Trinity, and Nimm was dein ist, number 144 for Septuagesima, seem to have stimulated him so little that he made them up almost entirely of old music, as we can see from the faulty declamation. Footnote: The chorus, Erforsche mich Gott, is certainly not original. In the In Gloria Dei Patris of the A major Mass, the effect is better, though even here he seems to have made use of some borrowed material. The strong, proud theme of the duet, Uns treffen zwar der Sündenflecken, again is wholly alien to this text. Of the two arias of the cantata, Nimm was dein ist, we can say with confidence that Bach could not deliberately have declaimed them in this way, but that they are fully explained by another text having been fitted to the music at a later date. End of footnote. The only original portion that has any interest is the motet-like chorus, quote, Nimm was dein ist und geh hin, take what is thine own and depart, end of quote, in which the instrumental basses dwell upon the representation of the depart. The cantata for the second Sunday after Easter, Du Hirte Israel, höre, number 104, takes us into a new world. Is the composer who here revels in the most delicate lyricism the same who elsewhere makes his music almost excessively characteristic? A charming triplet movement runs through the first chorus and the final aria, Beglückte Herde, in the aria, quote, Verbirgt mein Hirte sich zu lange. Mein schwacher Schritt eilt dennoch fort. My shepherd hides himself too long, yet I hasten with feeble steps. End quote. The oboes give a delightful picture of haste. The ravishing euphony and the perfect grace of this work ensure its immediate effect upon any audience. It is one of the most suitable for overcoming the common fear of Bach. The cantata of Midsummer Day, Ihr Menschen rühmet Gottes Liebe, number 167, and that for the 17th Sunday after Trinity, Bringet dem Herrn Ehre seines Namen, number 148, are also full of simple charm. The final chorale of the former, Sei Lob und Preis, with its joyous orchestral accompaniment, is particularly effective. The fine text of the cantata for the Sunday after Christmas, Gottlob, nun geht das Jahr zu Ende, number 28, is by Neumeister. The music shows that Bach worked at the text with pleasure. He accompanies the words that speak of the departure of the old year and the glorious approach of the new with a merry ballet in the minor. Then comes a simple motet chorus on Nun lob meine Seel den Herrn, in which the instruments merely reinforce the voices. At the end of this movement, Bach has written, quote, 174 bars, end quote. The two choruses of the New Year cantata, Herrgott, dich loben wir, number 16, are in a more popularly effective style. In the first, the orchestral basses keep up the rhythm of the joy motif. In the second, the tutti is broken by interludes for the solo bass. The small amount of mysticism in the works of this epoch is due to the texts. Two cantatas glorify the longing for death. The first, Ich lasse dich nicht, du segnest mich den, number 157, a solo cantata for tenor and bass, was written for the feast of the Purification of Mary. The symphonic accompaniment to the opening duet reminds us of the first aria of Jesus nahm zu sich die Zwölfe, number 22. Afterwards, a joyous light streams with increasing brightness over the expectation of death. The aria, Ich halte meinen Jesum feste, is like a heavenly roundelay. The final aria, Ja, ja, ich halte Jesum feste, is of almost extravagant cheerfulness. From Picander's poems we learn that this fine cantata was produced on the 2nd February 1727 on the feast of the Purification of Mary, and that Bach made use of it 4 days later at the funeral ceremony for the old chamberlain Johann Christian von Pünnigau. Death and youth are the subjects of the cantata for the 16th Sunday after Trinity, Liebster Gott, wann werd ich sterben, number 8, founded on the gospel story of the widow's son of Nain, Luke 7:11-17. The sun shines brightly on the fields as they bear the boy to the gate. The flowers of the meadow join in with the bell that peals from the tower. Chirping and humming is heard from near and far. Spitta says of this orchestral tone picture that it is woven out of the sounds of bells and the scent of flowers, and is filled with the spirit of a graveyard in the spring. In the aria, quote, Was willst du dich, mein Geist, entsetzen, wenn meine letzte Stunde schlägt? Why wilt thou be afraid, my soul, when my last hour strikes? End quote. The bells of death are heard in the minor, as if dark clouds were casting their shadows over the smiling meadow. These are driven away again in the aria, quote, Doch weichet ihr tollen, vergeblichen Sorgen, mich rufet mein Jesus, wer sollte nicht gehen? Away, ye mad, vain cares, my Jesus calls me, who would not go? End quote. In which the jubilant flute carries the strings and the voice along with it in a rapid jig. This splendid work should not be attempted except with a really good orchestra that is familiar with Bach. It is one of the rather few cantatas in which the composer has most carefully marked the phrasing and the dynamic signs, which indicates that he wanted special care in the performance of it. End of chapter 27, part 2. Read by Sandra, Montreal, 2021.